I want to live my life through a lens where I'm not reacting, but I'm actually directing my energy towards the things that are of the most service to me.
This has been particularly useful for both of us in terms of giving us a framework and a visual model for understanding the full complexity of life. If my life is the feast, my life is that thing, what am I actually putting into it? It's going to make it vibrant and tasty and like all the things.
Let's get into the origin of where these 7 energetic bodies came to life. The physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. I was introduced to 3 more energetic bodies. They are primal, social, and financial. When we're exchanging money, we're exchanging energy, we're exchanging value with one another. And why it's so important to treat that, as I would the energetic bodies, as a foundational layer of being able to live a fulfilled life. You can have all of those other bodies checked, and if your financial body is imbalanced, it will break.
Without systems, freedom is suffocated. Because ultimately what I came back to is systems create sovereignty. They allow you to be the freest version of yourself that is possible because the systems hold what the mind cannot. It's not supportive to have 100 tabs like open in your brain. Like energetically, that is just draining you to try and remember everything you need to remember, all of the important tasks that nothing gets missed. This type of framework provides is clarity and understanding of who you are and what the important aspects of your life are, how to feed them, and what's out of balance.
Physical is the body that you live in. Mental is the mind that you feed. Emotional is the heart that you feel through. Spiritual is the soul that guides you. Primal is the instinct that roots you. Think about coming back to our animal body. Social is the community that connects you. And financial is the structure of it all that supports you. Our goals are on the other side of our systems. I deeply believe that. Our goals are on the other side of our intention. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. And welcome back. Welcome back. We're trying something new today. I think we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
Jump right into the fun.
I want to take a moment to share about a powerful mental health resource that has been a total game changer for me, and that's Anywhere Clinic. For the past 2.5 years, I've been working with an online psychiatric provider, and the impact has truly been incredible because therapy isn't just a tool for crisis moments. It's a tool for personal growth, emotional mastery, and overall wellness. And with Anywhere Clinic, you can get virtual expert care from the comfort of your home. Whether you're exploring ketamine therapy, you need medication management, or just a supportive guide, it's time to prioritize you. And you can by visiting anywhereclinic.com. You can book an online appointment for as low as $120 or check and see if your insurance covers it. So go to anywhereclinic.com because your mental health deserves it.
You know, as Tori and I have begun this amazing journey with how to stay human and started to transition over from coachable into this and getting to share this together, every episode feels so much different. They're tangible at a certain point. And what we've learned is as we've started to create these, you know, some of them are things that we want to share with the world. And some of the things are just really what's most alive for us in that moment, right? And so as we take you through what's been alive for us in this moment, I'm super excited to introduce you to, you know, the ways in which we live our life, right? And maybe take you a little bit deeper into our personal worlds and the way that we show up with the note that we are far from perfect, with the note that we struggle, with the note that we run into challenges, and with the note that we still have a long ways to go. But I'm grateful that we keep going. You know, one of the things that we were sharing with some people yesterday that mean a lot to us is this idea that when you walk on the way appears. And so the code that I've learned in life above anything else is just to go and to trust that life will load as you move. It's almost like a video game that's rendering in real time. So I could not be more excited to just share life with our audience and with you today. But before I do, how are you, Lev?
I'm so good. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think life is just this ever unfolding game, experiment, whatever, you know, like whatever metaphor you want to use. And certain seasons bring certain lessons and teachings and all the things. And I know we've both personally and collectively been deep in the work of self-optimization and self-mastery. And just like, I think one of the values that we share is just a deep desire to get the most out of life possible. And, you know, something that kind of doesn't feel so aligned or isn't something that we want is to leak our life force energy or our creativity or our, our potential because we haven't created the systems and the structures to support who we want to become, and I think the thing about us, as well as I would assert like a lot of our listeners, is they're coming to this show because they care about, who they're becoming.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it is for sure. One thing I can say though, that is, the most essential though, to this journey of being a work in progress is not taking a day off from that journey. I think we make a choice in our life at one point of whether we're going to commit to being our best self, whether we're going to sway on that decision or whether we're not going to. And so the work in progress means that it's constant work, constantly in progress. The journey of self-mastery we were sharing on the way over to the studio today is a never-ending and infinite journey. And it becomes, it's one of those things where we can practice and we can, put all these pieces in place into our life, but they don't really matter until life gives us the challenge in which we need to utilize these tools, right? And so many of us, we feel like we're well equipped, and then the moment comes where things actually get hard and we can crumble. Right. And we can break. And for us, I know what's been really stretchy for us recently is that our foundation has been really unstable. Right. We've been in this process now of one, falling in love for the course of the last 7 months. And two, as a part of that process of falling in love, really getting to shape and paint our future. Right. But our future has been uncertain in a lot of ways because we've been painting it and creating it. We don't necessarily know where we're going to live, although we're trying. We don't necessarily know what we're going to be doing, but we're figuring it out. And now we've been in this process of transitioning to a new city, right? And it's changed everything for us because what our the container that's been holding us, our home for the course of the last several months, is not feeling much like a home anymore, right? And so I think these are the moments that I refer to where, the practices that we put into place are actually getting put into the real life, real scenario. Like we are in the game right now.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I can typically feel when change is coming.
Yeah.
And before I met you, I was starting to enter into the season of shifting out of what felt like a really solid, stable living situation here in Vegas. And, I'd been here for 3 years, but like right before I met you, I was started to feel like something shift internally and my desires change. And, just feeling like I had sort of hit a point where I was starting to outgrow my current situation. And I think so many people can relate to that because we've all outgrown friendships or cities or old ways of being. And that's what the personal development growth path requires you, is to keep outgrowing your former self or former versions of yourself that, had different priorities or were in different seasons of life. And I think we're also collectively seeing that we're in a growth spurt stage that sometimes looks like we're in the midst of a lot of I don't knows. And even recently, over the past couple weekends, you and I got to facilitate together in a really beautiful space, some really, really deep work for the handful of individuals that came and worked with us in Sanctuary. And some of the reflections that we got from people was around this idea of like being in the messy middle,
right?
And being, not being where you used to be, but not being 100% in this new life or new, season, and being in that interim liminal phase where you're not who you used to be, but you're not who you're becoming fully. And how do you navigate that? And also this, I think, story that we're all sold is that one day you're going to hit this finish line of quote unquote growth. The only finish line that really exists is like, if we're talking about that, then we're talking about death. You know what I mean? Like there is no, like you said, it's an infinite game. It's ever evolving. There's so many levels. And yet we all have this desire of like getting to the end state, end goal. And if we don't judge ourselves to be there yet, then we feel like we're incomplete or we feel like we haven't done enough, right? And how can you also find grace for yourself in those middle phases, in the places where you don't feel complete, but the progress that you've made is still sufficient.
To me, I think that the messy middle oftentimes represents a period in your life where you're feeling some level of imbalance, right? You might be saying that I'm great here, but not great here yet. I'm in the midst of the transition. Mm-hmm. I haven't quite gotten where I think I'm supposed to be. And one of the things that I oftentimes find myself encouraging is that, A, you're perfect right where you are, right? And also, it's really, really hard to recognize that when you're in that moment. It's really easy to set unrealistic expectations for ourselves. It's really easy to shame ourselves. And so I like to break things down a little bit further, right? Because I recognize that things can feel off when we're in that space. And oftentimes I feel like the reason that things feel off is because we're not in a great enough awareness of our life holistically. We may be tuned into a sensation of, I'm not quite where I want to be. Things might look okay on paper, but things still aren't feeling quite right just yet. And it's sometimes hard to pinpoint where in my life that might be occurring. And so we may be pouring energy into the thing that we think is supporting us, when in reality, there's another element of our life that really wants our attention. And so, for me, one of the things that I try to spend a lot of my life doing is living life with deep intention and attention to all areas of my life. But I recognize that it can feel really ambiguous. And so one of the things that I try to introduce is this idea of framing my life through this concept of different energetic bodies. And it's a mental model that I use to be able to keep my life in some level of organization. And most importantly, to be able to see different buckets of my life, and where one might be overfull, right? And where one might be lacking, so that instead of just saying something feels off, I can actually pinpoint it and focus my energy in that area specifically. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love to be able to introduce this concept today on how to stay human, which is what these energetic bodies are, how we can come into awareness with them, and then what are actual practical things that we can do today. Because oftentimes the messy middle is going to exist no matter what. We're always going to be in some period of transition or shift. So again, how do we find balance and clarity and focus, even in the times that feel unclear to us?
Yeah, I mean, this has been particularly useful for both of us in terms of giving us a framework and a visual model for understanding the full complexity of life, right? And if you think about it, I know you're going to get into what it is exactly, but what I find helpful is being able to provide myself some clarity about what actually goes into making my life what it is. Yeah. What are all of those ingredients? If life is like, I know I've been using these metaphors of like soup or like making a cake, and I want the ingredients that get put into that dish to be the best ingredients possible. And if my life is the feast, my life is that thing, what am I actually putting into it that's going to make it vibrant and tasty and like all the things? Or is it dull and nasty? And if we can think about that from our lives from that perspective and what you're about to share, I think each of these is an ingredient for making life really amazing.
Yeah. And making it really rich, and making it, most importantly, a life that is lived with intention, right? So I really want to stay with attention and intention as a part of this conversation today. I want to live my life through a lens where I'm not reacting, but I'm actually directing my energy towards the things that are of the most service to me. And I'm noticing when something doesn't feel right, and being able to, again, to pinpoint where that might exist so that I can fill the areas in my life that are lacking. And as a result of that, I can live in a greater state of abundance. So on that note, let's get into the origin of where these 7 energetic bodies came to life. And so the first 4 that I share, you've probably heard of before. They come through a more traditional kind of Eastern philosophy, right? Which is this idea of the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body, which I think many of us are tuned into, right? And many of us probably spend time in each one of these bodies. It may be unintentionally, it may be without full awareness and focus, but we probably spend a lot of time in each of these. The other three that, I was introduced to the concept of the 4 energetic bodies years and years and years ago, and I found that I always felt like there was something that wasn't quite fitting in. I felt like I still wasn't being able to experience like the fullness of life through just looking at life through those four lenses. And so through one of my coaches about a year and a half ago, I was introduced to 3 more energetic bodies. And these for me really help to round out what makes us human in a lot of ways. So they are primal, social, and financial. And it's interesting because when we think of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, primal, and social, those feel really true to what it means to be human. But I really want to spend some time on financial today as well, and why the financial body is an energetic body. It's not just an asset in our life, but it's actually an exchange of energy. And so when we're exchanging money, we're exchanging energy, we're exchanging value with one another. And why it's so important to treat that, as I would the energetic bodies, as a foundational layer of being able to live a fulfilled life. Because you can have all of those other bodies checked, and if your financial body is imbalanced, it will break each one and a crack will form, right? We've experienced that before. That being said, let's spend a little bit of time on each, and most importantly, I want to spend this episode more than anything going into how we can actually show up in these today, right? Because I recognize that when we hear these types of concepts, it can feel really overwhelming, particularly in the areas that we're feeling like we're lacking. And so most importantly, what I want to make sure we get to spend some time on today is how we can show up in these, how we show up in these in our lives, and how we can show up in these on a continuous basis, even if we're just getting started, right? So to break them down a little bit further, physical is the body that you live in, right? Mental is the mind that you feed. Emotional is the heart that you feel through. Spiritual is the soul that guides you. Primal is the instinct that roots you. Think about coming back to our animal body. Think about coming to the thing that's just instinctually true for us. Social is the community that connects you. And financial is the structure of it all that supports you, right? And so, as I mentioned, they're all interconnected. And when one is off, the others feel it. A great example of this is if we neglect our physical body, our mind fogs, right? Our emotions tend to spiral without having that mental clarity, and our connection to source and our spirituality tends to close, right? And then, of course, you can probably imagine how that would then impact your financial body, how it would impact your ability to connect with others. And then, of course, your primal body usually stays, I notice with most, will stay secondary to all of these bodies. And we'll speak about that momentarily. But before I get into how we can actually show up in these, I'd love to just hear your perspective on this framework, and also just this idea of like, how does living with structure serve you? Especially as someone, by the way, just as a note, like Tori is a proper fairy, right? So she's half here and half there all the time.
What he means is like, I'm a type B personality. Exactly. I like flow. I like being able to, follow my spontaneity and my impulses and not have to be overly structured. Yep. But I've watched myself go through different seasons of life where I've been extremely structured and disciplined and had systems that supported my life. And then I've watched myself burn all of that down for the sake of, I want freedom, what I thought would be freedom, and watched actually how without systems, freedom is suffocated. Because ultimately what I came back to is systems create sovereignty. They allow you to be the freest version of yourself that is possible because the systems hold what the mind cannot, right? Like you can only hold so much information in your brain at once, and it's not indicative of success, or it's not supportive to have 100 tabs like open in your brain. Like energetically, that is just draining you to try and remember everything you need to remember, all of the important tasks that nothing gets missed. And I've learned this the hard way at times, and I've watched other people in my life learn it the hard way at times, where, that creates more like chaos than anything else, right? And so if
Which
we
makes
want
sense, right?
Right. I mean, it's
Practically
obvious.
speaking. I mean, think about this just like, I just want to chime in for a moment here. Like, think about if you have 100 tabs open on your laptop. All of a sudden, your
Everything
laptop,
moves slower.
it's hard to find anything, and B, it's really sluggish.
But to your point, like these frameworks are so important because no one typically teaches you this when you're starting to build a life.
This
right?
is not taught in school.
It's not. And you're expected to figure it out.
Yeah.
And frankly, I have met so many people who are always chronically in the I'm figuring it out stage of life. Mm-hmm. Every time I talk to certain friends, I'm like, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm figuring it out. And I'm like, but we haven't ever, why are we not like figuring out certain things like systems that can support our lives to help us versus just being in this repetitive loop of struggling with the same things all the time. And that's what I think, this type of framework provides is clarity and understanding of who you are and what the important aspects of your life are, how to feed them and what's out of balance. And as we go on, I do want you to kind of talk about like, how do we identify once we know like these different areas of our life and what they represent and how we nourish them, but what are the ways in which we can identify where do we need to like put some more time and attention in?
100%. I mean, I think of it almost as like when we live life through these types of frameworks and models, we almost have like a dashboard for our life. Mm-hmm. So like, I really want to encourage us to actually look at this model through the lens in which you would build something like a framework for a business that you're creating, right? I mean, because we all know the story of the person who's like crushing it in business, right? But doesn't have anything else in their life figured out. And so one of the things that Tori and I talk about a lot is this idea that like we want to approach all of our life with the same level of focus, intention, and structure. We don't want to just have this really well-structured business with these amazing task systems and this awesome calendar. And then we come to our personal life and it's totally in disarray and we give up on it all.
Yeah. Like I am over winging it.
Right.
Like winging it doesn't produce the results that you want. And I am still all for trusting in God and the universe for support, like listening to your intuition. But I promise you, winging it will never produce the results that you want it to. And so we have to be more structured. And
yep.
Yeah, I think let's get into it.
So I just want to remember this as we're going through this and keeping this in the back of our heads. It's surrender with aligned action.
Totally.
Right? It's I release to what life has for me. I am detached from the outcome, but I am very intentional with the input. Right. And again, we do this because above all, we don't want to live a life where we're constantly feeling behind, where we're constantly feeling like we're actually taking steps backwards, where we're constantly in the stage of figuring it out because our goals are on the other side of our systems. I deeply believe that our goals are on the other side of our intention. And frankly, if we were to use a reference point here for anybody that's achieved significant levels of success, they live their life this way. As someone myself who I get to spend every single day with 625 of the world's leading entrepreneurs, visionaries, and so forth, worth upwards of $10 billion, they have the most structured and routine lives ever. And what they do, what they know more than anything is their most valuable asset is their time. And so how do we protect our time? We utilize structures and frameworks so that we can live a life of balance, right? Which kind of gets into this concept of the 7 energetic bodies. So, I'm grateful to be able to introduce these. I really believe, as I've mentioned, that without structure, balance is impossible. So let's open this up with this idea of vitality, right? Because I really feel like if our physical body isn't fulfilled, it's very, very difficult to achieve success with any of our other energetic bodies, right? Like I mentioned earlier that if your body is unhealthy, then your mind fogs, your emotions are dysregulated, your connection to source becomes really unclear. Right? That's not the life that we want to live, but it starts with making sure that we have a healthy body. So that being said, I think of it as a gateway, right? Let's break it down though into really what it means to have physical health, right? Because I feel like what the challenge that we experience in the world today is that health is usually described as how we take care of ourselves when we're sick versus take proactive actions to make sure that we're actually taking care of our health as we have it. Right? This is the concept of like the sick care system versus the healthcare system. This is the modern medical crisis that we create. And so when I think about health, I think about what are the things that I can do to feel alive in my body versus the things that would punish my body. Right. And so for me, I break it down into really 3 key areas that we can actually start implementing right now and today to be able to live a life of vitality. And those are exercise, sleep, and nutrition. That's it. I just spent this amazing week in Boston, and I got to visit all of the most incredible longevity labs. I got to work with these incredible doctors who are solving cancer, and they're reversing age, and they're allowing us to regrow our hair and organs and all sorts of crazy stuff. Right. And every single one of those people said, if I were to tell you nothing else, I would tell you to walk down 10,000 steps a day, have 3 square meals, and sleep for 8 hours a night. Like the misconception is that longevity is reserved for the wealthy and that the only people that deserve to be healthy are the people that can afford it. But in reality, everything is very accessible to us today. So I'd love to break this down further, but as a fellow health enthusiast here, especially knowing that you were on this incredible health journey right before I met you that then carried over into our relationship, like I would love to just hear like what are the foundational elements, the non-negotiables that you commit to ensure that you can live a life that, well, frankly, where you look like this every single day.
Thanks, honey. I mean, yeah, it's interesting for me personally, the way I grew up, physical health was prioritized through sport and deprioritized in terms of nutrition. So just given the cultural context for where I grew up, our nutrition was poor in the sense like we were using, like I'm from the South. My mom.
Welcome to America, unfortunately.
I mean, my mom cooked. We ate well, but we were not healthy in the understanding and context of how I understand it now. So my body reacted to that. My body familiarized itself with that. My body was carrying inflammation and craving foods that are not its natural state, but it was what it had been conditioned to want and had been what was normal to me. And so it was actually, when you start doing personal development work or doing the work on yourself, I find as a coach and in my own personal life is you tend to start in the area that creates the most pain for you, right? And for me, my physical health had never created so much pain that it required me to pay attention to it. So it was something that kind of fell under the radar until I started working on some of these other energetic bodies, my emotional body, my mental body, because those things were more pressing to my everyday life, that the physical body came kind of secondary, third in that order. And so it actually took me several years of work on myself to even get to the point where I was ready to tackle the physical body as not as something I wanted to prioritize. So that being the past, year or so of my life where I'm like, this is the year that I want to optimize my health and become vital and powerful and strong and actually see what's possible when I bring my attention and intention to this life and to this area of my life. And so what that's looked like is having doing my blood work, understanding what my hormone levels are at as a woman, understanding what my stress looks like. What are as somebody who has, a history of family illness, being on top of, annual checkups, whether that's if you're a woman, like going to the gynecologist every year, doing your annual physical exam, knowing what's happening. Because here's the thing, if we take the perspective of, I don't want to know, I don't want to look under the hood, I don't want to be aware, like everything's fine. And yet you're fatigued all the time. You're exhausted all the time. You're experiencing symptoms that you have learned to manage and you've normalized, but are not actually allowing you to function at your highest level. And so for me, just doing a baseline assessment of like, where am I? Understanding those numbers. And I've talked about this on this podcast before. I've talked about it on social media because I truly believe in this product. Yeah. But Function Health is a great way to start if you want to understand what's happening in terms of like 100 different biomarkers that they test for. It's $499 a year. you get tested multiple times, and the comprehensive and concierge approach to understanding your data is there. Now, if you want to check that out, you can go to functionhealth.com/Tori Gordon and learn all about it. But that's what I have personally used to understand things at a deeper level. Now, from that perspective, that then empowers me to know, what do I need to do?
Right.
What do I need to focus on? Are there supplements I need to be taking? If so, what are those? Right. So I can be intentional with that. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D and maybe iron and certain things. Actually having the right supplements in your routine, you don't know the type of impact that could make on your day-to-day energy levels, clarity, mental fog, all the things. Sleep, is a huge one too. I love my sleep. I'm very it's just something I have to do, because if I don't get it, I don't like the way I feel.
Yep.
And I have a low tolerance for feeling bad.
Yep. Especially when it's something that's like fixable. Solvable.
Right. But I think a lot of us go through life, and again, we've normalized just high levels of exhaustion, high levels of stress. And I know personally, because this was my life experience, I didn't realize that the everyday baseline I was operating at was probably like a 70%. And I was like, I want to know what it feels like to get at these higher levels. And that's more possible than you think if you start to track it, if you start to measure the things that matter in your life, period. And your health. Without that, you can't do much else.
Yes. If you do not have a target, you will always miss it. You will always miss it. Yeah. What I'll say is that I look at the physical body as being something that we oftentimes take for granted. Right. And I think that many of us will also say, and I've heard this particularly from people who are 10 to 20 years older, which is just, well, this is just me getting old. This is just a factor of me aging. And it's not. I witness so many people nowadays who are in their 60s and 70s and even 80s who are running marathons, who are running businesses, who are changing the world each and every day. And just by living with that purpose and that sense of vitality, even if it's not physically present for you, that alone will add on years of aging. I mean, one of the other interesting things that I discovered as I was going really deep in this longevity path over the last several months and really over the course of the last year is that purpose and connection to yourself and to others are part of the hallmarks of health span extension, believe it or not. So when we think about the physical body, let's make sure that we remember that it's interconnected with the other bodies, right? By having a healthy emotional body, by having a healthy social body, those things uplift our physical body. When we think of our physical body, the most important piece I want to share again here is that we don't take it for granted and we don't ignore the things that are pressing and aware for us. So a couple of things that I'll leave with, and then I'd love to speak a little bit about how the physical body now supports the mental body, are get tested. It's simple, it's easy, it's available, and it's inexpensive, right? As Tori mentioned, Function Health is amazing. It's a great starting place, and you can work your way up to things like Life Force and things like Fountain Life as you continue on with that journey. But, comprehensive medical testing is available now at a lower cost than ever before. And even with the healthcare premiums challenges that we're experiencing in the US, Fountain is still $500. And frankly, they run Function, is still $500, and they'll likely run a discount, I imagine, coming up on Black Friday shortly here. So be on the lookout for that. Secondarily, what I'll say is that give your body an opportunity to cleanse itself. I think we feed ourselves with so much junk, whether it's something that we're trying to do or not. I mean, we've seen now that you can go and buy, a salad from a local grocery store, and it's loaded with sugars and carbs and fats. And you're like, where did these come from? And that is unfortunately part of the American diet, right? So my encouragement to you is to consider doing something like a 3 to 5 day fast. I've done quite a few over my life, and they are hugely impactful. One that I recommend is Prolon. It's a fast mimicking diet. So you're not actually reducing your calories to zero. It's a 3 to 5 day fast. It wipes your system out so that you can actually notice what it's like to feel fully alive, right? And then I would close with just making sure that once you have those two pieces that are sort of the reset and the awareness in place, then look at the pieces that we've been mentioning over the last few minutes: movement, sleep, and nutrition. Movement, let's not overcomplicate it. It's 30 minutes a day or 10,000 steps. Keep it really simple as a starting place, work your way up over time. Sleep, like Tori mentioned, I always like to think let's just go back to the rudimentary wisdom that we were shared. 8 hours a night. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be special. 8 hours, consistent times a night. We're not perfect at it. But I will say that the intention is the most important piece in trying to maintain some level of consistency. I also will say having a cool bedroom, shutting off your phone, an hour or two before bed, having some sort of wind down ritual. Those things make a huge difference in getting really healthy sleep. And then lastly is nutrition, right? And again, rudimentary wisdom, 3 balanced meals per day, high in protein, and then high hydration as well. And then the last piece I'll share is continue to track it ongoing. I think that things like function are incredible. I also think things like getting a Whoop, an Apple Watch, or an Oura Ring make a huge difference so that you can actually see your progression over time. Because again, what you measure matters. And if you don't have a target, you're always going to miss it. So again, let's stay focused on our physical body. I think it's one of the most important to being able to lay the foundation for the other energetic bodies. And one of the big ones I noticed, the biggest connection with my physical body is my mental body, right? I think, now granted that what I'm about to say, this is very masculine and it's something that is particularly relevant to me, but I think of the work in my mental body is like sharpening my sword, right? Like this is one of the greatest gifts we've been given is our mind, right? What a powerful, powerful tool. It's full of information and knowledge and creativity. And oftentimes it's drowned in uncertainty, unawareness, fog, and disorganization, and the 1,000 tabs that Tori mentioned. So mental mastery to me is all about being able to stay sharp and creative, but also about being able to create space mentally so that we can think freely and openly, because in that space is where your next big idea is going to come. It's where the thing that you haven't quite figured out yet is all of a sudden going to get solved. So Tori is a wizard when it comes to sharpening her mind. We have an academic master sitting next to me right now, a straight A student, a brilliant college graduate, and someone that is constantly learning. So I would love to hear your perspective, which I know is very much at this point just a hobby for you, but how do you keep your mind sharp, and how have you done it for 30 plus years now?
Great question. I think I was asked this by a client this past week, and I've been working with him for probably 6 months, and he's high up in a big tech startup, and there's a lot of pressure that he's under. There's a lot of expectation, and when you're in those environments, it can feel like there's a lot on the line. Mm-hmm. And your ability to make quick decisions impacts a lot of things. What I understand about the mind is that it can be our greatest asset or our greatest limitation. There's a supercomputer inside of us that can either be programmed for possibility and success or programmed in a way that actually becomes our greatest obstacle. And so you have to understand that the majority of the thoughts that you have per day are predominantly the same thoughts that you had the day before. So if you're having 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are the same repetitive thoughts that you had the day before, if you're repeating the same thoughts and that inner dialogue is, you're a piece of shit, you're fucking this up, you got to do better, you're behind, like if that's the inner dialogue that you are having, or whatever it might be on that, like that level of feeling like there's more to do. What if this happens? So those anxious, worried, fear-based thinking, then that is the environment that you're living in. Mm-hmm. And that has an effect on you, right? And so part of it is cleaning up that environment internally. And yes, it's through awareness of understanding what are the belief systems that I have, the limiting beliefs. What does my inner critic sound like? What are the thoughts that are running the show on a day-to-day basis? And I can tell you based on the results that you have in your life, right? Because if the results we have in our life come as a byproduct of our beliefs, which inform our thoughts, that inform our feelings, that inform our actions, and then our results come as a byproduct of those things. If you don't like the results you're getting in your life, you have to come back to the thing that creates those, which are your beliefs and your thoughts. A belief is just a thought that you've had over and over again, and you've labeled that thought as true. And so looking at all of the beliefs that you have, what you believe to be true about yourself and about life, and deciding if that's really true, challenging them, and starting to do the work of reprogramming in a way that's actually going to optimize you for success. Now, that's a big piece of it, subconscious reprogramming. The other thing is, when I had this client come to me and he's like, okay, you've been working with me for 6 months. Like, give me I don't always like to give prescriptions for my clients of like, this is what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. I'm really there to help mirror back to them, to guide them into their own conclusions and their own ideas. But he very directly was like, what do you think I'm missing? And I said, frankly, you need to slow the fuck down. Like, you need to sit on the ground in silence for as long as you can handle it. Like, you need to start to build a relationship with being in your mind without distraction, without stimulation, without external influence, and actually know what's happening in there. Hear yourself.
Yes.
Hear the conversations that are going on. Observe. And, part of my practice is sitting in silence and stillness, because otherwise what's happening is there's so much noise internally, and you start to lack the ability to discern whose voice is whose. Is that your mom's voice who's telling you what you need to do? Is that your own intuitive knowing? Is that something you heard from social media? Is that what's in the news? Like, where are your own thoughts? And how do you start to dissect and digest those and hear yourself? And you can't hear yourself if everything is loud, right? So for most people, to start to do the internal cleanup and start to build a relationship with their mind that's actually supportive, people say meditation, but just be still.
Yeah.
Be in stillness. If you can't be still and be silent, that tells you where the work is, right? Because you're doing so much as a way to try and get somewhere, but you need to often do the opposite. And, I just did a float tank yesterday, and the practice was just be, right? And a float for 60 minutes. I laid there in silence in a dark room, just with myself, total sensory deprivation. And because of the work that I've done in terms of mental mastery, about where I put my attention, understanding that what I put my attention on grows. Where your attention goes, energy flows. So what I give my time, energy, and attention to is what I'm going to get more of and what is going to grow. Then I've learned how to fix my attention on the things that I want more of versus what I want less of. So if you're continually focused on your worries and your anxious thoughts and what's going wrong, and you're funneling your attention there, it feels like this monster that keeps getting bigger because you're funneling it with your energy. So needing to learn how to transition or to shift your focus or your attention on something else is so, so powerful. And it's often simple, but it's a struggle for so many people. And the other thing that I'll say is all of the internal chaos, the internal noise, the distraction, the feeling like you can't slow down and can't be silent and can't just observe yourself is coming from so much stress, right? It's creating stress, it's coming from stress, and it's like this loop that continues to feed itself. But what I have learned over the years is, I've heard this from Emily Fletcher, who's been on the show multiple times. She created a company called Ziva Meditation, for those who are learning to meditate. But stress makes us sick, stupid, and slow. If you want to be a high performer, high achiever, and optimize your life, you need to look at the stress that's in your life, because it is not allowing you to make the decisions you need to make in real time. It's making you second guess yourself. It's you're fumbling the ball when the ball gets past you because of stress. And if you can't manage stress physically, like from a comprehensive perspective of understanding what's happening on a biological and neurological level, but also from the point of the mind as an energetic body, and understand that stress it's not a badge of honor to say, I work well under stress. It's not something we should be proud of. It's something we need to understand how to manage and work with, and to hopefully lessen. I'm not saying we're going to get rid of all stress in our life, but understand that it is something that is causing us to be sick, stupid, and slower than we would like to be. And a key of shifting that to become more productive is learning how to manage that internally.
Yeah. And what I would ask, well said across the board, brilliant mind here. What I would say, is to the person that works well under stress, what would it look like if you weren't stressed? Right. And B, I would ask, how well do you create under stress? Right. One of the things I think of when it comes to mastering the mental body is first tuning into how many areas of my life have I become robotic in? How many things am I just doing them because I can, not necessarily because I want to? And how often in my life am I creating versus doing a repetitive action versus consuming?
Or just like you said earlier, reacting.
Sure. 100%.
Most people aren't intentionally creating their lives. They're reacting to the circumstances of their life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things I said to my client. And this is a lot of Joe Dispenza's work. You know what I mean? He's like, the neurons that fire together wire together. So the thoughts that you have repetitively over time, they create a neural pathway in your brain. And so the more you have that thought, the easier that synapse connects and you follow down that train of thought over and over and over again. And also most people, when they start their day, they start it from a reactive perspective in terms of they're immediately looking their emails, they're immediately responding to text messages. And now those things are dictating your day versus you setting yourself up in a way to create the experiences that you want to have and to respond to the things that life will throw out at you from a grounded, intentional, and clear place. That alone is going to change the trajectory of how you feel during the day.
100%. So one of the things I wanted to add in actually, and I love this, is that we can absolutely play the game of looking at what's in our mind, doing our best to quiet the noise, focus on the things that are of the most importance to us, see where our energy where our energy is getting leaked, see where we're getting distracted. And also what I've played as someone that doesn't have enormous amounts of space during the week just to be still and to notice. I've had to also look at this from the other perspective, which is being very intentional with the number of things that are coming into my mind, right? Because we only have so much mental capacity. We don't have the ability to just constantly be in a state of consumption, right? Because then what ends up happening is we have these different distracting voices in our mind, like Tori mentioned, and we don't know what's actually driving or guiding our life.
Information overload.
Information overload. And unfortunately, we live in a culture of consumption. So it's very, very likely that many of us are in a state of information overload and overwhelm as a result of that. So one of the games that I play with myself and have been for some time now is being just ultra sensitive to what I consume. A great step that you can take to doing this is actually putting a feature on your phone, and every iPhone has this, and some Androids may have it as well, which is a feature called Screen Time, where I can actually lock down individual apps for defined periods of time throughout the day. So if you were to look at my phone, it's the most clutter-free phone in the world. I only get phone calls from like 10 people that I love. I get no other notifications on my home screen, and I make a very intentional choice that if I'm going to open up certain apps, particularly the ones that will overwhelm and overload the mind, like a social media app, a text messaging app, an email app, I do that at very defined periods of the day. If I'm with Tori and I want to be present and aware with her, she knows this better than anybody else. My phone's almost always off or shut down unless it's an emergency that comes in, because I want to be really intentional with the things that I consume so that I can be present with the things that are important to me, right? And so the game to play here going forward, and I would invite you as our listeners into this, is stepping into this week and mentally, what is one thing that I would typically consume that I can let go of for this week? That's it. Let's start with decluttering the mind, and then we can build it back up with the things that we really care about, and then we can continue to sharpen that sword. So as a result of this, again, these energetic bodies are all interconnected with each other. You start to notice that you have more capacity and space in your life, right? As we take care of our physical body, our mental body opens. As we take care of our physical and our mental body, our emotional body starts to open as well. And I want to spend a little bit of time on our emotional body here as well. Tori, again, sitting next to someone that is deeply aware of her emotional body, in part due to the fact that she works with many of her clients to make sure that they can come into a state of regulation and come into a state of connection, right? And I think of it for me as being someone that's deeply connected with my heart is how does every decision that I create be guided by my heart? How is my heart the compass? How am I filtering decisions towards the thing that my heart wants the most? Many people would describe this as do what your heart calls you to or leads you to. And so, there's a lot of techniques that you can do to begin this process of mastery of the emotional body. But for me, I think the first step in the journey is becoming aware and actually pausing before reacting, right? Not necessarily just moving with where the emotion takes you, but actually naming it, seeing it, and then acting upon it, right? And so that to me is the awareness component. And that to me is the first piece of regulating your nervous system before you then take an action that could be driven by your emotions. Because I think of emotions just objectively for a moment. I think of them as data, but not directives. They're not necessarily here to tell me what to do, but they are here to give me insight on what I might decide on. So I'd love to hear it from your perspective, of course, is like, how do we come into a state of regulation with our emotions so that our emotions are not the things that are driving all the actions that we're taking in our life?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is your first reaction to anything is usually a reaction from your inner child. So your default reaction is usually a instinctual one based on past wounding and trauma. So if you aren't able to pause, to reflect and to notice what your natural instinct is to react, maybe from a defensive place or whatever place it is, just know that typically your first reaction is one based in fear. Now, this is why we want to get good at creating space, right? Pausing, stillness, noticing, like you said. And I use a framework that includes 4 steps of notice your internal experience in terms of what is happening within your being, within your heart, within your head, within your body. What I find, like you said, doing the physical and mental work is key. I would say doing the mental work for sure is important to even get to the heart, because in the emotional world, because there is that saying, like the greatest journey you'll ever take is from your head to your heart. A lot of times I ask a client, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And they'll tell me what they're thinking. They have no understanding or framework or language for their internal experience other than intellectualizing their emotions and intellectualizing their feelings.
I know you get this. I know you're feeling this.
Not that we can't relate to this at all. Right?
I'm intellectualizing my emotions. I know I'm feeling this.
Right. So the first place is to notice, and the second is to name. Those are the first 2 steps of getting in touch with it. Right. Because I've said this on the show probably before. I know I have in past years, but your body holds stored repressed emotion that hasn't been fully processed. Now, the physical body is not going to start to release that. You're not going to be able to get in touch with that until it's regulated and feels safe. So if your nervous system, if you're stressed out, if you're constantly in survival, it's going to be very difficult for you to get in touch with your emotional world from a really grounded space, because your emotions are going to be a lot of reactive emotions, right? And they're going to feel very chaotic and very dysregulated. But in order to start to live your life from a heart-centered place, that requires opening your heart and getting in touch with your heart. And that is vulnerable. That is tender. That is, for a lot of people, scary. Mm-hmm. The scariest place to go, because they've been hurt or wounded and like, I'm not letting you anywhere close to this. Heck no. Like, my life has been about learning how to not get hurt. So why would I allow my heart
self-preservation,
to lead me, right? That's, again, survival-based living. But we have to come into terms that, like, come into a relationship with our own heart before we can start to actually share that and open it with other people. And if we don't feel safe feeling those things, we're certainly not going to feel safe expressing that to someone else. And that's internal work. That Ram Dass says the work that you have to do is in the privacy of your own heart, not in the privacy of your own mind, not in the privacy, not with another person. It is It is your work to do. It's you. And you know the things that you've been avoiding. You know the things that you have shame around. You know the secrets that you carry and you don't tell anybody about. You know the ways you've been hurt or betrayed or rejected or felt abandoned. If you're really, again, still quiet, honest, and raw. But I get why people don't go there, because it can be painful. It can resurface all of your most challenging experiences. But if you don't face those things, they will unconsciously shape your entire life. Carl Jung, one of the most famous psychologists on the planet, says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to run your life and you will continue to call it fate. It is not your fate to be broke, poor, alone, single, whatever like that. But if unconsciously you have repressed stuff that you have not worked through, whether that's trauma, emotional wounding, right? Everything that has ever hurt us is an emotional wound. There's psychological wounds too, but it's also like that hurt me on my heart. And so I'm going to cover that up and I'm going to protect that so that it doesn't happen again, right? Because I don't want to feel alone, abandoned, rejected, not enough, or like I don't belong. So it really does come back to the ways in which our heart has been hurt that then we try to avoid through all of these fun mental gymnastic tactics that we do, right? I'm just going to, if I create this much wealth or success, or if I get this girl, or if I then that's going to make me feel the way I want to feel, right? So many people are trying to solve an emotional problem with an external solution of, if I get this, then I'll feel blank, right? Understand everything you desire is because you desire to feel a certain way, right? Everything is connected. And so how do we get in touch with those feelings? How do we get in touch with what's driving us? And so you notice your internal experience, you learn language to name that felt sensation, that emotion. So what I'm feeling is anger. What I'm feeling is frustration. What I'm feeling is sadness or grief or confusion. Confusion is a great word to describe I don't know. Mm-hmm. So many people, when I ask them, how are you feeling? I don't know. Well, let's play this back. If you did know, what do you think it might be? So many of us, we take I don't know as our first response and then we leave it there. We don't go back again to try and actually sit with the truth. So if you are like, I just don't know, ask yourself again, if I did know, what might it be? And try to name it that way. So notice, name, and then touch where that is on your body. Is that in your heart? Is that in your head? Is that in your belly? It's like, where does that live, that emotion live inside of you? And then can we start to build a relationship where we can talk to that part of us, talk to that emotion? Because again, emotion is energy in motion. And if it's not expressed through the body, it gets repressed and stored in the body. And then that can lead to physical dis-ease in the body that leads to disease later down the line. So I hope you're starting to see how all of these energetic bodies feed each other and are impacted by each other.
Beautifully said. I want to touch on a couple of things and just highlight them. I think these are relevant for all, but I want to lean in particular to the men that are listening, because I find that men in particular have a really hard challenge connecting with their emotions. It's an age-old stereotype, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. And it's one that I struggle with as well, honestly.
Well, and the women get, you're overly emotional.
Of course. So it's not manly. And so unfortunately, dramatic. While we think that we live in this highly progressive society, the reality is that a lot of the conventional stereotypes that have held us back are still really present in our lives today, particularly as men, which is don't be connected to your heart. Don't show your emotion because that's weakness, right? And weakness means that inability to create safety. And inability to create safety means that I'm not a man.
Well, I hope people listening don't take this out of context. He's not saying that it is weakness.
I'm not saying that it is weakness. I'm saying that's the perception that our society paints, is that by showing by showing vulnerability, by showing my heart, I then show weakness, and weakness is taken advantage of, and being taken advantage of means that I can't create safety, and not being able to create safety means that I'm not a man. So I want to reverse that entire concept and say that particularly to the men that are listening. First of all, you are a man and nothing can take that away from you, period. Secondly, play with your emotions because we all feel them. And oftentimes men feel them more than they choose to realize how present that they are in our life. And it's quite freeing actually when we allow ourselves to sit with them. More often than not, I find that particularly with men, as emotions come up, they're quickly intellectualized and moved to the side. They're compartmentalized. Right? Or spiritualized. But I really see quite often that they're put into compartments. Those compartments are closed, and then I pull open another one. That door is completely shut, and it lives in a place in my body that might create some dis-ease over time, and then of course that can turn into physical disease. My invitation is to actually just stay with that emotion when it comes to you. Right? Just be with the feeling of it for a moment. If that means expressing the emotion, express the emotion. So if I'm feeling angry versus just saying, I'm just going to tough this out and compartmentalize that emotion, let's get angry. Let's yell, let's scream, let's kick, let's fight. Let's tune into our primal body. Let's be with that emotion. If I'm feeling sad, let's be with that emotion for a moment. If that causes me to feel broken, if that causes me to feel difficult to speak, if that causes me to maybe even feel a tear coming up, let that be with us for a moment.
Are you saying, so when you feel anger, because I just don't want this to get misconstrued by our listeners or somebody to clip this and be like, Kyle said you should scream and fight and yell, right? Like what happens when you're feeling anger in a conversation with me? How do you express that?
I actually do. So the invitation here is to be with the emotion. And if that means kick, fight, scream, and yell responsibly, then kick, fight, scream, and yell responsibly. Again, I find that we suppress more often than not when feelings of anger and frustration come up, because again, we want to compartmentalize and try to keep try to maintain the peace. And so of course,
a certain subset of men, I think a lot of men are more connected to their anger than they are other emotions. And there are a lot of men that will react from that place.
For sure. And then that's why I appreciate the clarity here, because it's right. I want to do everything I want to do responsibly and everything I want to do intentionally. And also I want I also want to allow the emotions to be. So that doesn't mean that if I feel angry, I'm expressing that towards another person that could possibly be harmful to them. But that does mean taking a moment and maybe going to a place where I can responsibly express anger and allowing that emotion to be present. Right. And if that means kick, fight, yell, and scream, that's okay. We want to create a safe space to be able to do that. And we want to allow that emotion to be expressed in the same way that we want the emotion for sadness to be expressed in a space that feels safe for sadness. And also we want to be able to experience joy, and we want to be able to experience abundance. And when we feel that, we want to be able to express it freely and openly without fear that that's going to make us appear, again, weak, feminine, not man enough. So again, the invitation here is to be with an emotion, to name the emotion, to stay with the emotion, and to responsibly and safely, without harming another, express the emotion as well. I think what we'll find as a result of that is that our life becomes more free and more open. And the interesting thing is that the desires that we had at the start of this process actually become further activated. So a game that we can play is the next time that we're feeling a certain way in an environment where we wouldn't normally express it, try expressing it responsibly. If someone offends me, right, try playing with, that actually hurt me and that wasn't okay. That's not welcome here, right? I can freely and openly and confidently express the emotion while still holding my masculinity. Or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling like this is too much in an environment where I would typically grind it out and tough it out, try expressing it. Try expressing it to the people maybe in your work environment that would otherwise be your subordinates, and watch how much greater of a leader that you become and how much more they trust you as a result of that. The most powerful thing that we can do as visionaries, as leaders, as creators is be vulnerable. People identify, respect, connect, and most importantly, will follow you if you act from a place of honesty, openness, authenticity, and vulnerability. And P.S. to this all, this is exactly what your partner wants as well. Whether your partner is a man or a woman, they want your openness and they want the connectedness to your heart. And for men who are in partnership with women, if you're feeling like something's not there, what she wants more than anything is for you to freely and openly express the thing that you're not willing to say.
Because I can be in the vicinity of you for weeks or months and have that connection, but there's nothing that's going to create a connection more than you actually talking to me from a deeply vulnerable, authentic, true place within yourself. And what I'll say too is that like, so connection is not about proximity to me.
100%.
Connection is about authenticity and vulnerability and truth. And, you know, the struggle with this for a lot of people is you're going to have to go head to head with your ego, because your ego is going to say, don't give them that weapon. Don't give them the ability to hurt me in this way. Your ego is going to say, you know, if you say this, they're not going to respect you. If whatever the ego is trying to,
or I might lose the thing.
Right. But if your ego is going to try and trick you into abandoning yourself to try and keep the peace or be seen as a certain way, like that's leading you further away from your heart, further away from your soul.
And it's driving the people that you care about the most further away from you. And, you know, it's so interesting. Just recently, I had a conversation with Tori that I walked into the conversation feeling nervous and anxious that she was going to see me as less than the man that I want to be for her. Right. That she was going to feel less connected and less safe in my presence by me sharing the things that were hurting me, the things that were painful for me, the things that I was uncertain about and falling short on. And I came out of that conversation after opening my heart with her saying, this is all that I wanted. I actually feel more connected to you. I respect you more greatly. And the subtext of that all is also, that's more sexy. That's more attractive.
Because what makes a woman feel safe is congruence, because you can walk into a room and know energetically some shit just went down. You know, if you walk into a room and people just had a fight, you can feel it in the air energetically. But if you ask them, you're like, hey, is everything okay? And you're like, great.
Yep.
You know, nothing makes somebody feel more unsafe is when your words don't match the energy that you are putting off.
Yes.
And if you want someone to feel you and to trust you and to believe you, then your energy needs to match what you're saying, right? And if you're saying I'm fine when you're not fine, you got to look at that. If that is like, if you are chronically a person that pretends like things are okay when they're not, there's a problem there and there's a disconnect there. And we can't get to any of this connection with other people before we start to connect those dots ourselves of saying there is a misalignment with what I'm internally feeling and how I'm showing up and what I'm sharing with the world. I'm acting like I've got it together when internally I'm a freaking mess. Right. We've got to start to create lives that don't just look good, but they actually feel good. And that those match each other. And that doesn't mean we hide when we feel bad. It means we're honest about it.
You can't hide even when you try. The power of people's awareness and intuition is stronger than you might think. So the thing that you're not saying or the thing that you are saying that is not in alignment with the way that you are feeling will be noticed by others. So do not think that the mask that you are wearing is working that well. We all see you, right? And everyone sees me and everyone sees Tori. So all you can really do is just be fully who you are and fully how you feel and watch the world shape around you and also watch the world follow you and be led by you in the way that you desire. The most powerful leaders are the ones that lead from their heart.
And I just want to also just say, where in the world did we get this idea that we have to be okay all the time?
100%.
We have to let that go. We're human, complex, dynamic individuals that experience and are meant to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. I don't care if you're seeing your girlfriend or your bro for the first time in a while. And there's not an expectation that you need to be good if you're not, right? Like, oh, how are things going? You're like, everything's great. I'm happy, blah, blah, blah. But like, we need to stop performing for each other and pretending to just be, to just keep up this idea that that's how we're supposed to be interacting with one another.
It's a facade.
And get to the point where we're actually developing authentic connection. And I think this is a transition for people who've gone, spent a lot of their life trying to just be perceived a certain way or just for whatever reason we've gotten there. But I think all of this comes back to authenticity.
All I can say is think about the moments where you felt most connected to someone else. A moment where you looked at someone so deeply and you felt them, and ask yourself, was I feeling their body? Was I feeling their mind? Was I feeling their heart? Was I feeling their spirit? I would almost say that in every one of those scenarios, you were feeling their heart, because the heart is the one thing that we can all relate to, because we've all got one. It all beats the same way and it all feels the same way. And so if we know that those are the moments where we felt most connected to others, then there's no need to play a game to pretend, but instead show up fully as you are in each and every moment, and watch again how the world shapes around you, and how all of a sudden the things that you desire the most gravitate towards you, because you're living in alignment with yourself. So to come all the way back home to where we began today, I think on that note in particular, the interconnection of these bodies is so incredibly important. If I'm not taking care of my physical body, my mind fogs, my emotions are dysregulated, and all of a sudden I'm not living the life that I desire. I'm living a life of imbalance and fatigue and confusion, and I'm always feeling behind.
I call this in the red zone.
In the red zone.
So I think this is helpful for this specific energetic body. And I know we're going to kind of wrap this up, and we're going to come back with a part 2 for you guys to get into the last 4, because this is so juicy and meaty, and like we want to give you all of it. But this is really, really helpful in terms of a framework. So there's something called the emotional guidance scale that you can look up. There's also something called the map of consciousness, which puts emotions in an order of energetic vibrational frequency. And it goes from like shame all the way up to enlightenment. So like shame, guilt, like despair, all of these like really dense, heavy, some people would call them negative. They're just heavy, dense emotions are what I would say the red zone. And then we get into like, there's a yellow zone of more neutral emotions. And then we get into the green zone of joy, gratitude, empathy, love, enlightenment, right? And we obviously all want to hang out in the green zone a lot more, but we need to be able, I think having this, and this is something I teach my clients, is how do you name what I'm in the red zone right now? To be able to say to a friend or a partner, like, hey, I'm in the red zone, or knowing I'm in despair, apathy, judgment, like whatever these like emotional states are, those are not the times you want to be going and having a hard conversation with your boss or with your partner or You want to ideally get into the green zone to at minimum get into the yellow neutral place before you go and try to have certain types of conversations, or just be able to know when you're in red and you need to nourish yourself, you need to shift your internal state. And so I think of it like a battery. And if you're in the red, what do you need to do? I need to go plug in, and I need to go resource myself so that I have more. Like I can shift my perspective, I can shift my energetic state, which is also going to shift what I'm magnetizing to myself and move life from that perspective. So I think that's something that's helpful. And I highly recommend, and maybe we'll link to this in the show notes, is the map of consciousness with those emotional states and vibrational frequencies. And what I love about Stephen Hawking's work is it also shows the different worldviews, perspectives that we get into when we're in these emotional states. So there's a God view, like even there's a view of self when you are in shame that correlates with your view of God or the universe and how you perceive it, whether you think it's punishing or you think it's loving, whether you think life is happening to you or for you, right? These are perspectives that you can only get into when you're in certain emotional states of being. And so we'll link to that in the show notes if you find that helpful, and maybe we'll even go deeper into it on an episode in the future.
Yeah. So I love that. And what I think of this as, you have your life dashboard, which represents all of these 7 energetic bodies that we've spoken about. And each one of those energetic bodies is going to have its own system for measuring it as well. Right. And that's what we can slowly break things down into over time. And before you know it, what you're going to have is a map of your life, right, in which you can be able to very distinctively point at where I might be feeling imbalanced and what I can do to make sure that the thing that I'm showing up to is something that I'm able to show up fully to. And a great game that we can then play is, as we're starting to diagnose ourselves and build these systems, we also now have the partner of AI that we can put this all into and say, based off of this life dashboard that I've created for these 7 energetic bodies, based off of how I'm currently doing or scoring or feeling in each one of these bodies. And based off this decision that I'm about to make, i.e., I'm about to walk into a conversation with my boss to negotiate my salary. Is this the right time? How can I show up best? And what are the needs that I need to communicate, right? You will command respect and connection from the things that you care about once you come into greater attention and intention with each of these areas of your life. And as a result of that, every decision that you make will be a decision that you will be able to say, I left it all in the field, right? I showed up fully for that. So closing today, so grateful that we got time to explore what I feel like are, and particularly Eastern philosophy feels like, 3 of the key energetic bodies: physical, mental, and emotional. Let's remind ourselves that we're never going to fully arrive and that this journey of mastery is an infinite and never ending journey. But the first step in it is the awareness. And the next step is, for me, actually being able to create a system in which I can identify and see all the areas of my life and where I can show up better. So we're going to come back to you on the next How to Stay Human episode and start exploring the other 4 energetic bodies: primal, social, financial, and spiritual. But I hope that you can come home from this episode and begin this process of mapping out the things that are important to you in the 3 that we discussed today. So beautiful. Thank you for your amazing body, your amazing mind, and your amazing heart. Seen and appreciated, love. Find us, of course, Kyle A. Herron on Instagram. Tori Gordon on Instagram finds it How to Stay Human Official. See you next time.
Thanks.